The Tower of Babel is one of the most intriguing and mysterious stories in the Bible. It tells of a time when humanity, united by a single language, decided to build a tower so tall that it reached the heavens. Their goal? To make a name for themselves, to show the world their power and ambition. But what followed was a dramatic and powerful intervention by God that would forever change the course of human history. In a moment, their pride was shattered, as their language was confused, scattering them across the earth and making it impossible for them to communicate. The story of the Tower of Babel is not just an ancient tale. It holds profound lessons for us today about human ambition, pride, and the consequences of trying to overstep our bounds. But what if there's more to this story than meets the eye? What if the Tower of Babel was not just a cautionary tale, but also a symbol of something much deeper? In this video, we're going to explore the full history of the Tower of Babel like you've never seen it before. From its biblical origins to the various interpretations across cultures and religions, we'll uncover the hidden meanings behind this ancient structure. We'll dive into its symbolism, examining what it reveals about the nature of human unity, the dangers of arrogance, and how the echoes of Babel can still be heard in the world today. We'll also explore historical and archaeological theories about the tower's existence and how it might have influenced the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia. Why did the people of Babel attempt such an audacious feat? And what can we learn from their downfall? As we piece together the story of the Tower of Babel, you'll find that it's not just a tale from the past, but a story that continues to resonate in our modern world. Stick with us until the end of this video as we reveal the mysteries surrounding Babel that no one has fully explained before. You won't want to miss it. The Tower of Babel is one of the most enigmatic and thought-provoking stories in the Bible. It appears in the book of Genesis, chapter 11, and offers a rich narrative full of cultural, theological, and historical layers. Understanding the historical and biblical context of this story requires us to go back to the early chapters of Genesis and consider both the theological message and the geographical setting in which the tower was built. The story of Babel comes right after the flood narrative, where Noah and his family were spared from God's judgment. The world begins anew, and Noah's descendants are instructed to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. At this point, humanity still speaks a single language, and the people are united in their goal of settling down and building a city and a tower that would reach the heavens. The decision to build a tower, and the ambition behind it, is rooted in the desire for power, fame, and a sense of permanence. The people's intent was to make a name for themselves, to create something lasting and grand. The city and tower were not just a physical structure, but symbolized humanity's collective desire for security and self-sufficiency apart from God. The text presents a key motive behind the construction of the tower: to prevent being scattered across the earth. This desire for unity is not just practical, but symbolic. In the ancient world, cities were often seen as places of safety and stability, and building such an impressive structure would ensure the people's unity and strength. The construction of the tower may also have been a form of defiance against God's original command to disperse and fill the earth. The ambition of the builders suggests a direct challenge to God's authority, as they sought to make a name for themselves rather than glorify the Creator. Theologically, the story of the Tower of Babel highlights humanity's tendency toward pride and self-reliance. The people's ambition to build a tower that reached the heavens can be seen as an expression of human hubris, a desire to elevate themselves to a level equal to God. The tower was likely not intended as a simple architectural feat, but as a symbol of humanity's attempt to reach beyond the limits of their existence, transcending the boundaries God had set for them. In response to the construction of the tower, God intervenes in a dramatic way. He confuses their language so that the people can no longer understand each other. As a result, the project comes to an abrupt halt, and the people are scattered across the earth. This divine intervention can be understood as both a judgment and a mercy. By confusing their language, God prevents humanity from becoming even more prideful and self-sufficient, which could lead to further rebellion and separation from their Creator. At the same time, this scattering is a fulfillment of God's original command to fill the earth, which had been ignored by the builders. The scattering of the people and the confusion of their languages is not only a consequence of human pride, but also a means of preserving the diversity and complexity of human culture. The story hints at the way God works in the world to bring about His purposes, even through the limitations and misunderstandings of human action. It serves as a reminder that no matter how grand human achievements may seem, they are ultimately subject to God's sovereignty. Historically, the story of the Tower of Babel reflects the ancient Mesopotamian tradition of building ziggurats, stepped pyramid-like structures with a temple at the top. These ziggurats were often dedicated to the gods, and they served as centers of religious activity and power. The Tower of Babel is often thought to be a reflection of this cultural practice. The Babylonians, for example, built the great ziggurat of Etemenanke in Babylon, which is believed to have inspired the biblical story. This ziggurat, dedicated to the god Marduk, was one of the wonders of the ancient world, and it is likely that its scale and grandeur made a lasting impression on the biblical authors. The geographical setting of the Tower of Babel, according to Genesis, is in the land of Shinar, which corresponds to the ancient region of Mesopotamia, located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This area was a cradle of civilization, where the Sumerians, Akkadians, and later the Babylonians and Assyrians developed some of the earliest urban centers. The construction of monumental structures like the Tower of Babel would have been an expression of the technological and organizational advances of these early civilizations, as well as their religious devotion. Biblically, the Tower of Babel is part of a larger narrative that emphasizes God's sovereignty over human affairs. While humans attempt to establish their own control and reach the heavens, God's intervention shows that no human endeavor can truly compete with His authority. This story sets the stage for the following biblical narratives, where God's covenant with the patriarchs, particularly Abraham, will be established as the means through which His plan of redemption will unfold. The scattering of humanity and the confusion of languages at Babel also mark the beginning of the nations and the divisions that will later play a prominent role in the history of Israel and the world. The story of Babel has been interpreted in various ways throughout history. Some see it as a literal account of an actual historical event, while others view it as a symbolic tale meant to illustrate humanity's pride and rebellion. Regardless of the interpretation, the key message remains the same. Human ambition, when it seeks to elevate itself above God, leads to chaos and destruction. The Tower of Babel is a reminder that human efforts to build empires or attain greatness apart from God's will are ultimately futile. In Christian theology, the story is often seen as a precursor to the coming of Christ. Where the builders of Babel sought to make a name for themselves, the New Testament teaches that Jesus came not to exalt Himself, but to serve others. In contrast to the pride and confusion at Babel, the message of the gospel is one of reconciliation and unity through Christ, who brings peace and understanding to the nations. The Pentecost narrative in Acts, where the Holy Spirit enables the apostles to speak in different languages, is often seen as a reversal of the Babel event, symbolizing the unification of humanity through the work of Christ and the spread of the gospel. The Tower of Babel, therefore, is not just an ancient tale of human pride, but a foundational story that reflects humanity's ongoing struggle with self-sufficiency, ambition, and the desire to challenge divine authority. It remains relevant today as a powerful reminder of the consequences of pride and the importance of humility before God. The lesson of the Tower of Babel is one of profound significance. It serves as a warning against the dangers of human pride, self-sufficiency, and the desire to usurp the authority of God. Through the story, we learn not only about the consequences of disobedience to God's will, but also about His sovereignty, wisdom, and mercy in the face of human arrogance. The narrative of Babel encapsulates a divine punishment that highlights key aspects of the human condition, as well as the broader purpose of God's plan for the world: human pride and arrogance. At the heart of the Tower of Babel story is human pride. The people of Babel, united by one language and common purpose, decided to build a tower that would reach the heavens. Their goal was not merely to create an architectural marvel, but to make a name for themselves, ensuring they would not be scattered across the earth. This ambition reveals a deep-seated arrogance, a desire to transcend the limits of their created nature. In constructing the tower, the people sought to challenge God's authority, aiming to equalize themselves with the divine by building a structure that reached into the heavens. The underlying motivation for this monumental project was pride. Instead of fulfilling God's command to fill the earth and spread across the planet, the people of Babel sought to remain in one place, constructing a tower as a monument to their own glory. They wanted to create a legacy that would make them famous, symbolizing their own greatness and achievement. This desire to make a name for themselves, to build something that would be remembered for generations, reflects the fallen nature of humanity. A tendency to seek power, recognition, and independence from God. Divine intervention and judgment. In response to this prideful act, God intervenes by confusing the languages of the people. What had once been a unified group, speaking a single language, was now scattered and unable to communicate effectively. The confusion of languages was not only a practical consequence of the construction, but also a direct act of divine judgment. God's response to human pride was a deliberate act of disruption and dispersion. Instead of allowing the people to continue in their ambition, He intervened to frustrate their efforts. God's judgment upon the people of Babel teaches us a crucial lesson about the nature of divine authority. No human endeavor, no matter how grand or impressive, can succeed if it is driven by arrogance or a desire to replace God's authority. The act of confusing the languages was not just a punishment for the people's pride, but also a reminder that God is sovereign over all human plans. Despite the ambition of the people, their efforts were ultimately futile because they sought to build something independent of God's will. The dispersion and fulfillment of God's will. Through the confusion of languages, the people were scattered across the earth, and the tower was abandoned. This act of dispersion was not only a punishment, but also a fulfillment of God's original command to fill the earth and multiply. The story of Babel is, in this sense, a reminder that God's will for humanity will be accomplished, regardless of human efforts to oppose or resist it. The people's attempt to defy God's plan by staying in one place and building a monument to their own glory ultimately led to the very opposite outcome. They were scattered across the earth, fulfilling God's mandate to fill the world with human life. The dispersion of the people from Babel also demonstrates the consequences of resisting God's will. In their attempt to secure their future and ensure their unity, the people of Babel ended up being divided and scattered. This serves as a warning that when we try to impose our own plans and desires over God's, we often end up working against the very purpose we seek to achieve. God's plan for humanity is one of unity and purpose, but when humans act in pride and defiance, they end up causing division and disarray. The enduring significance of Babel. The lesson of Babel extends beyond the ancient story itself. Throughout history, humanity has continued to struggle with the same temptations and desires exemplified by the people of Babel. The desire to make a name for oneself, to build something that will last forever, and to challenge God's authority is a recurring theme in human civilization. In every era, there are individuals and groups who seek to establish their own greatness apart from God, whether through political power, scientific advancement, or cultural achievements. The Tower of Babel serves as a reminder that no human endeavor, no matter how grand, can succeed if it is built on the foundation of pride and self-sufficiency. It teaches us that true greatness comes not from our own achievements, but from humbling ourselves before God and recognizing His sovereignty. The confusion of languages in Babel is not just a historical event. It is a symbol of the brokenness that results when humanity seeks to build its own kingdom, apart from the rule of God. God's mercy and judgment. Although the judgment on Babel was severe, it also contained an element of mercy. By scattering the people across the earth, God was not merely punishing them, He was also ensuring that His plan for humanity's multiplication and spread across the earth would be fulfilled. The confusion of languages served as a necessary step in the unfolding of God's larger plan for the world. In this way, God's judgment was also an act of mercy, as it allowed humanity to continue fulfilling His purpose, even if it was done through a means that the people did not anticipate or desire. The act of scattering the people can also be seen as an opportunity for redemption. As humanity was divided into different nations and languages, it set the stage for the future gathering of the nations in the kingdom of God. The scattering of Babel may have been a judgment, but it also became a precursor to the coming together of all people in Christ. In the New Testament, the Pentecost event, where the Holy Spirit enabled the apostles to speak in many languages, reverses the division caused by Babel and points to a future where all people will be united in the gospel of Jesus Christ. The ultimate lesson of Babel. The ultimate lesson of the Tower of Babel is a reminder of the dangers of pride, the importance of humility, and the sovereignty of God over all human affairs. The people of Babel sought to build a monument to their own greatness, but in doing so, they found themselves divided and scattered. God's judgment was not merely punitive, it was also a redirection of human history toward His ultimate purposes. The story serves as a timeless warning against the temptation to elevate ourselves above God, and a reminder that true unity and purpose can only be found in submission to His will. In today's world, the lessons of Babel remain relevant. Whether in our personal lives, in the ambitions of nations, or in the pursuit of power and influence, we are constantly faced with the temptation to make a name for ourselves. The Tower of Babel warns us that such efforts will ultimately fail if they are not aligned with God's will. Instead, we are called to humble ourselves, recognize our dependence on God, and seek to build lives that bring glory to Him, rather than seeking to make a name for ourselves. In this, we can find true fulfillment and meaning as we participate in God's ongoing plan for the world. The Tower of Babel, as described in the Bible in Genesis 11, has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and theologians for centuries. Its story of human pride and divine intervention raises questions about its historical and archaeological authenticity. Over the years, several theories have emerged that seek to explain the origins and significance of the Tower of Babel, its potential real-world counterpart, and the lasting impact of the event. These theories range from cultural interpretations to geological and architectural speculations, each contributing a piece to understanding this ancient biblical narrative. The historical context of Babel. To begin with, the Tower of Babel story is situated in the early chapters of Genesis, where the world's population had just survived the Great Flood. Humanity, having once been scattered by the deluge, was now attempting to reunite and build a city that would symbolize their collective power. This ambition is reflected in the desire to construct a monumental tower that reached the heavens, an act meant to cement their place in history and possibly rival the gods themselves. The purpose behind the construction of the tower, according to Genesis, was not only architectural, but also cultural, a means of preventing future dispersion and asserting human dominance over the earth. From a historical perspective, the Tower of Babel's story may reflect the ambitions of ancient civilizations that sought to build grand structures to demonstrate their power, just as ancient Mesopotamians built ziggurats to honor their gods. The ziggurat, a massive step tower, was often associated with the temple complexes of Mesopotamian cities and was meant to bring the worshippers closer to the heavens. This historical context is vital, as it suggests that the Tower of Babel, if it were based on a real structure, might have been inspired by such ziggurats. Indeed, the ambition to construct monumental structures is common throughout ancient history, making the Babel story a symbolic representation of human pride and disobedience. The Ziggurat of Babylon. One of the most commonly proposed real-world counterparts to the Tower of Babel is the Ziggurat of Etemenanke, located in ancient Babylon, modern-day Iraq. This ziggurat, dedicated to the god Marduk, was one of the largest and most impressive structures of the ancient world. Archaeological evidence suggests that it stood at over 90 meters tall, making it one of the tallest man-made structures of its time. Many scholars believe that the biblical story of the Tower of Babel may have been inspired by this ziggurat, as its construction involved the same type of monumental ambition that is described in the Genesis account. The Ziggurat of Etemenanke was a massive stepped pyramid with a temple at its summit, dedicated to the god Marduk. Its construction was an expression of Babylon's power and religious devotion. It is plausible that the biblical story of the Tower of Babel was inspired by such a structure, as the Babylonians themselves believed that their ziggurat was a means of reaching the heavens and connecting with their gods. While the biblical account is largely symbolic, the physical reality of the Ziggurat of Etemenanke provides a historical backdrop for understanding the kind of human ambition that would lead to a project like the Tower of Babel. Some scholars suggest that the biblical account of Babel may have been a later interpretation of the downfall of this ziggurat, which was eventually destroyed in antiquity. It is believed that the structure was damaged during various military campaigns, and it is possible that the story of the tower's collapse was recorded as a divine judgment against human pride. This interpretation aligns with the theological message of the Babel story, where human ambition leads to divine intervention and the scattering of people across the earth. Linguistic diversity and the spread of languages. The most striking element of the Tower of Babel narrative is the sudden and divine confusion of languages, leading to the scattering of the people. This story has intrigued linguists and anthropologists who have explored whether there is any historical basis for the sudden emergence of linguistic diversity in the ancient world. While the Genesis account presents the sudden creation of different languages as a divine act, modern linguistics suggests that language evolution is far more complex, involving gradual changes over time rather than a single cataclysmic event. Nevertheless, the story of Babel has often been used to explain the origins of the world's many languages. Some scholars argue that the diversification of languages could have been the result of cultural and geographical isolation. As ancient populations migrated and settled in different regions, their languages began to evolve independently, leading to the vast array of languages we see today. This gradual diversification could be seen as a parallel to the scattering of people described in the Babel story. In addition to this linguistic theory, the story of Babel has also been interpreted symbolically in the context of human relationships. The confusion of languages can be seen as a metaphor for the breakdown of communication and unity among humans. The act of dividing humanity into distinct language groups reflects the fractured state of human society, a situation that would continue throughout history as nations and cultures formed and clashed. Archaeological evidence of ancient cities and towers. Archaeologists have uncovered numerous ancient cities and structures that could provide context for the biblical account of the Tower of Babel. The ancient city of Ur, located in present-day southern Iraq, is one such example. Ur was a major Sumerian city and featured the Ziggurat of Ur, a massive structure dedicated to the moon god Nana. Like the ziggurats of Babylon, this tower was a prominent feature of the city, and it is likely that its construction and purpose contributed to the tradition of monumental towers in the region. While Ur predates the construction of the Tower of Babel, It provides insight into the cultural and religious significance of large-scale tower construction. Another important discovery in the region is the city of Nineveh, the capital of the ancient Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians, like the Babylonians, built impressive structures and monumental works of architecture, and their urban centers were marked by grand palaces and temples. The construction of monumental buildings in these ancient cities was closely tied to religious beliefs, with rulers often using these projects as a way to demonstrate their power and devotion to the gods. These architectural traditions could have influenced the biblical story of Babel, where the construction of the tower was similarly an expression of human ambition. Symbolic interpretations and theological insights. From a theological perspective, the Tower of Babel story has been interpreted in various ways. Many scholars view the story as a metaphor for humanity's attempt to challenge the divine order. The tower, in this interpretation, represents human efforts to surpass divine authority, with the confusion of languages serving as a divine intervention to humble human pride. The scattering of the people can then be seen as God's way of asserting his sovereignty over humanity and preventing further rebellion. Some have also suggested that the Tower of Babel represents the human desire for unity at the expense of diversity. The people of Babel sought to create a homogeneous society that could reach the heavens, but God's intervention led to the creation of diverse nations and cultures. In this light, the Babel story is a reminder of the importance of diversity in human society and the recognition that human strength lies not in uniformity, but in the acceptance of differences. In conclusion, the Tower of Babel story has inspired countless theories, ranging from historical and archaeological investigations to symbolic and theological interpretations. While there is no definitive archaeological evidence that directly proves the existence of the Tower of Babel, the historical context and cultural parallels provide valuable insights into the possible origins of the story. The ziggurats of Babylon, the spread of languages, and the building practices of ancient civilizations all offer a glimpse into the kind of structures and ambitions that could have inspired the biblical account. Ultimately, the story of the Tower of Babel remains a powerful symbol of human pride, divine intervention, and the complexity of human society. Whether understood as a historical event or a theological allegory, the story continues to resonate with people today, offering timeless lessons about ambition, unity, and the sovereignty of God. The Tower of Babel has remained a central motif in art, literature, and culture for centuries. Its symbolic resonance has made it a powerful theme in the exploration of human ambition, divine intervention, and the consequences of human pride. From the Bible to modern works of fiction, the Tower of Babel serves as a profound reflection on the limitations of human endeavor and the complexity of communication. This theme has been explored in various ways, from classic Renaissance paintings to contemporary films and literature, each interpreting the story in its own way. The Tower of Babel in Renaissance art. One of the most iconic representations of the Tower of Babel comes from the Renaissance period, particularly through the works of the Dutch artist Peter Bruegel the Elder. His painting The Tower of Babel, created in the 16th century, is perhaps the most famous visual interpretation of this biblical story. The painting depicts a colossal, crumbling tower under construction, stretching into the clouds, surrounded by busy workers, animals, and intricate architectural details. The structure is imposing and almost chaotic, a reflection of human ambition taken to an extreme. Bruegel's tower is both monumental and flawed, with the lower parts of the building showing signs of decay, perhaps foreshadowing the destruction that the story foretells. Bruegel's interpretation of the Tower of Babel is not just a literal rendering of the biblical tale, but also a metaphor for the failures of human endeavor. The tower, a symbol of human ambition to reach the heavens, is ultimately doomed to fail, an image of human folly and pride. This portrayal reflects the Renaissance interest in humanism, as well as a recognition of the limitations of human achievement in the face of divine will. The chaotic construction site, with its vastness and incompleteness, suggests that even the grandest human projects are subject to divine intervention and decay. The symbolism of Babel in literature. The Tower of Babel's symbolism extends far beyond the visual arts, influencing countless works of literature. In these texts, the tower often represents human attempts to transcend their limitations, to unite under one language or one ideal, only to face fragmentation and division. One of the most notable literary explorations of this theme is found in the works of Jorge Luis Borges, particularly in his short story, The Library of Babel. In this story, Borges imagines a vast, infinite library containing all possible combinations of letters, symbols, and words, mirroring the idea of Babel as a place where communication, once universal, becomes fractured and ultimately meaningless. The story explores the tension between the search for knowledge and the eventual futility of that pursuit. The library represents both the pinnacle of human achievement in the pursuit of understanding and the despair of realizing that meaning is ultimately elusive. Borges' use of the Babel metaphor reflects the theme of limitless ambition, leading to confusion and fragmentation, much like the biblical tower. In modern literature, the Tower of Babel is often used as a metaphor for the fragmentation of society, culture, or language. For example, in the works of authors such as Salman Rushdie and Umberto Eco, the image of Babel evokes a world where communication is hindered by the multiplicity of languages and the inability to reach a common understanding. These authors use the tower as a lens through which to examine the complexities of human interaction and the consequences of division. The Tower of Babel in modern film and media. The concept of the Tower of Babel has also appeared in modern film and media, often as a symbol of global conflict, misunderstanding, and the limits of human power. Films such as Babel, 2006, directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu, take direct inspiration from the biblical story. In the film, multiple storylines across different countries and cultures intersect, leading to misunderstandings and tragedies, much like the scattering of humanity in the biblical narrative. The film explores themes of language barriers, cultural division, and the complex interplay of human lives in a globalized world. In this context, Babel is not just a literal tower, but a metaphor for the fragmented nature of the modern world, where communication and understanding are often impossible across cultural and linguistic divides. Similarly, in animated films like the Lego Movie, 2014, the concept of the Tower of Babel is subtly explored. The story of a seemingly perfect, controlled society, where everything is supposed to fit together perfectly, is disrupted when characters begin to think for themselves and challenge the established order. In this way, the tower is a metaphor for an artificial, overly ordered world that is ultimately unsustainable. While not explicitly referencing the biblical story, the film uses elements of the Babel narrative to critique societal control and the loss of individuality. The Tower of Babel in music. The Tower of Babel also appears as a theme in various musical compositions, ranging from classical symphonies to contemporary songs. One notable example is the composition Babel by the Israeli composer and musician Eden Reichel. His music draws on the themes of division and the quest for unity, much like the biblical story. The song uses a mix of different languages, symbolizing the fragmentation of the human experience, and highlights the difficulties of communication across cultural boundaries. In classical music, composers like Igor Stravinsky and Olivier Messiaen have referenced the Tower of Babel in their works, using the motif to explore the limits of human creativity and the breakdown of unity. Stravinsky's The Soldier's Tale, for instance, is an allegorical piece about the dangers of ambition and the consequences of challenging divine order. While not directly referencing Babel, the work explores similar themes of conflict, confusion, and the fall from grace that echoes the biblical narrative. The Tower of Babel in architecture. The Tower of Babel has also inspired architecture throughout history, with several buildings and monuments referencing the tower's ambitious design. Ziggurats, the stepped pyramids built in ancient Mesopotamia, are often considered precursors to the biblical tower. These massive structures were intended to reach the heavens and were dedicated to gods, much like the Babel Tower in Genesis. The most famous of these is the Ziggurat of Etemenanke in Babylon, which is believed to have influenced the biblical story. Although it did not resemble the tower described in the Bible exactly, its grandeur and purpose were similar. The idea of a towering structure reaching toward the divine has been a central feature of many religious and architectural traditions, often symbolizing human aspiration and devotion. In more recent times, the Tower of Babel has inspired futuristic architectural designs and utopian visions. Architects and designers have imagined skyscrapers and towers that attempt to defy the limitations of space and gravity, symbolizing humanity's continued desire to build toward the heavens. These modern structures, like the Burj Khalifa in Dubai or the planned vertical cities of the future, reflect a continuation of the same ambitions that drove the builders of Babel. The Tower of Babel has transcended its biblical origins to become a lasting symbol in culture and art, representing human ambition, communication, and the inherent limitations of our endeavors. From Renaissance paintings to modern films, the tower serves as a reminder of the dangers of pride and the consequences of attempting to defy divine authority. Whether in the context of art, literature, music, or architecture, the Tower of Babel continues to be a powerful motif, reflecting both the potential for human greatness and the inevitable divisions that arise from our efforts to unite. In all its forms, the story of Babel remains a timeless exploration of the complexities of communication, ambition, and the human condition. The Tower of Babel has been a prominent symbol throughout history, often appearing in art, literature, and popular culture. Its themes of human ambition, communication, and division have made it a powerful subject for exploration across various mediums. From Renaissance paintings to modern films, the Tower of Babel continues to inspire reflection on human nature, the limitations of language, and the pursuit of unity. The story's symbolism, rooted in the Bible, transcends religious boundaries and remains relevant in the context of contemporary society. The Tower of Babel in Renaissance art. One of the most iconic representations of the Tower of Babel comes from the Flemish painter Peter Bruegel the Elder. His renowned painting, The Tower of Babel, created in the 16th century, depicts a colossal tower under construction, a visual embodiment of human ambition and hubris. The massive structure rises toward the heavens, while workers, both human and animal, labor to complete the building. The architectural design of the tower, filled with intricate details and an air of disorder, suggests not only the scale of the project, but also its inevitable collapse. Bruegel's portrayal reflects the human desire to reach the divine and the ultimate futility of such an endeavor without divine approval. In the Renaissance, this painting, along with others depicting biblical themes, was used to reflect both the greatness of human achievement and the fragility of that achievement when it is not in accordance with divine will. Bruegel's Tower of Babel serves as a reminder that even the grandest human creations, like the tower itself, are ultimately vulnerable to failure. It underscores the notion that, despite the potential of human ingenuity, ultimate success is only possible through divine guidance. This theme of ambition clashing with divine intervention would resonate deeply in a period when the Renaissance saw humanism flourishing, but also a need to acknowledge humanity's limitations. The Tower of Babel in literature. The Tower of Babel has also been a recurring symbol in literature, often representing fragmentation, the limits of human ambition, and the inability to unite people under a common purpose. The biblical story itself has inspired writers to explore the concept of communication breakdown cultural division, and the consequences of humanity's failure to achieve unity. A striking modern example of this is Jorge Luis Borges' short story, The Library of Babel. In this work, Borges imagines an infinite library containing all possible books, including every variation of letters and knowledge, creating a world where meaning is lost in an overwhelming sea of information. Like the Tower of Babel, the story illustrates the chaos and confusion that can arise when the pursuit of ultimate knowledge or unity goes unchecked. Borges uses the Babel myth as a metaphor for the futility of seeking total understanding and the inevitable disarray when humans try to build something that exceeds their comprehension. In other modern works, such as those by authors like Salman Rushdie and Umberto Eco, the Tower of Babel is used as a metaphor for the fragmentation of the modern world. These works often explore how language and cultural differences lead to disconnection and misunderstandings. In this context, the Babel myth speaks to the failure of communication in a globalized world where people are increasingly unable to bridge the gap between differing worldviews, resulting in isolation rather than unity. It suggests that humanity's attempts to build bridges, whether through language, politics, or technology, can still fall short of true understanding and cooperation. The Tower of Babel in modern film and media. In contemporary film, the Tower of Babel often serves as a powerful metaphor for the breakdown of communication and the resulting fragmentation of society. One prominent example is the 2006 film Babel, directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu. This movie weaves together multiple interconnected stories that take place in different parts of the world, illustrating how linguistic and cultural barriers can have profound consequences. The film uses the Babel story to highlight how miscommunication and the inability to understand each other across cultural and language lines create conflict and suffering. Babel portrays the global interconnectedness of humanity, suggesting that even in a world that is increasingly linked by technology, there are still insurmountable divisions that keep people apart. This theme echoes the confusion of languages in the biblical story, showing that despite advancements, humanity's fundamental inability to communicate remains a central issue. The movie underscores how the act of speaking without understanding or listening can cause harm and perpetuate conflict, drawing directly from the story of Babel's division. In addition to Babel, numerous films have used the story as a metaphor for communication breakdown and the chaos that ensues when people cannot understand each other. Movies that focus on global issues, such as the challenges of immigration, cultural differences, or the clash of civilizations, often draw upon the Babel story to show the divisions within society. The tower becomes a symbol of the human drive for connection that, despite its best efforts, sometimes results in greater alienation. The Tower of Babel in music. The Tower of Babel has also appeared in music, where it is used to explore themes of division, chaos, and the human pursuit of unity. Composers throughout history, including Igor Stravinsky and Olivier Messiaen, have referenced the Babel myth in their works to symbolize the tension between order and chaos, unity and fragmentation. The story of the tower's collapse mirrors the dissonance and disorder found in much of 20th century classical music, where composers experimented with breaking down traditional forms and structures. In more contemporary music, artists have used the Tower of Babel to explore the idea of fragmented communication in a globalized world. Israeli musician Idan Reichel, for example, released a song titled Babel, in which he mixes different languages in his lyrics to represent the division of cultures and the challenges of finding a common ground. The song speaks to the difficulties of communication in a world where linguistic and cultural differences often create barriers to mutual understanding. The Tower of Babel, as a symbol of this disunity, continues to resonate in music that reflects the complexities of the modern world. The Tower of Babel in architecture. Though the Tower of Babel itself is a mythical structure, its symbolism has influenced real-world architecture, particularly in the construction of monumental buildings that aim to reach the heavens or demonstrate human greatness. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia, such as the ziggurat of Etemenanke in ancient Babylon, are often seen as precursors to the Tower of Babel, as they were designed to connect heaven and earth and were dedicated to the gods. These massive structures, while not resembling the tower in the Bible exactly, share a similar ambition to build something monumental, both spiritually and physically. In more recent history, the Tower of Babel concept can be seen in the design of skyscrapers and other vertical cities, which represent humanity's continued desire to reach greater heights, both literally and figuratively. These modern buildings, while technologically advanced and often awe-inspiring, also reflect the ancient ambition of reaching beyond human limitations, an ambition that, according to the Babel myth, is doomed to failure without divine guidance. While the modern skyscraper might not collapse in the same dramatic way as the Tower of Babel, the symbolism of human ambition reaching for the sky remains relevant. The Tower of Babel continues to be a potent symbol in art, literature, music, and popular culture, representing humanity's attempts to overcome the barriers of language, culture, and communication. Whether in Renaissance paintings, modern films, or contemporary music, the story of Babel reflects the timeless human struggle to build something grand, only to be reminded of our limitations. It serves as both a warning and a reflection on the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of understanding, humility, and unity in a world that often seems divided. Through its various representations, the Tower of Babel reminds us of the fragile nature of human endeavors and the need for deeper connection across all cultures and languages. The Tower of Babel stands as one of the most enduring symbols in human culture and thought. Originating in the Bible's book of Genesis, its story serves as a profound narrative on human ambition, pride, and the limits of human effort. The Babel story is not merely about the creation of a great tower, but about the consequences of humanity's desire to reach the heavens, to make a name for itself, and to challenge the divine order. In this sense, the Tower of Babel offers lessons that resonate deeply with human nature and the dynamics of society. By examining the symbolism of the Tower of Babel, we can uncover several lessons for humanity, including the dangers of hubris, the importance of communication, and the inescapable limitations of human power. The danger of hubris and overreaching. One of the primary lessons from the Tower of Babel is the danger of human pride and ambition. In the biblical narrative, the people of Babel decide to build a tower that reaches the heavens, saying, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves." This desire to make a name for themselves reflects a deep-seated ambition to achieve something monumental, something that would make them immortal in the eyes of history. However, the very act of attempting to build a tower that reaches the heavens symbolizes an attempt to defy the natural order and to transcend human limitations. The lesson here is clear. Human beings are prone to overreach, believing that they can conquer or surpass the boundaries set for them by nature or divine authority. This prideful desire to achieve greatness, regardless of the consequences, is a recurring theme in history. From the construction of monumental buildings to the expansion of empires, human history is littered with examples of societies and individuals whose ambition led to their downfall. The Tower of Babel serves as a cautionary tale, warning that such ambition can lead to failure and ruin when it disregards the limitations of human power and the will of the divine. The consequences of division and disunity. Another critical lesson from the Tower of Babel is the consequence of division. The story describes how God, in response to humanity's pride and collective effort, confuses their language, causing them to no longer understand each other. The unity that had existed among the people is shattered, and they are scattered across the earth. This division creates chaos and disrupts the collective endeavor, effectively bringing the construction of the tower to a halt. This symbolic division offers a powerful lesson about the importance of unity and communication within human societies. It suggests that when people fail to work together, or when they allow their differences to divide them, the result is confusion, conflict, and the breakdown of shared purpose. In modern terms, the confusion of languages at Babel can be interpreted as a metaphor for the fragmentation of society. As the world becomes more globalized and interconnected, the challenge of communication and understanding across cultural, linguistic, and ideological divides is more pronounced than ever. The lesson of Babel teaches that unity is essential for progress, and that division, whether through language, culture, or ideology, hampers collective achievement. Moreover, the scattering of the people of Babel can be seen as a metaphor for the global divisions that arise when societies lose their sense of shared humanity. The breakdown of communication leads to a loss of cooperation, making it more difficult for people to collaborate on common goals. In a world that faces significant challenges, such as climate change, political instability, and economic inequality, the message of Babel serves as a reminder that cooperation and mutual understanding are necessary for overcoming the great obstacles of our time, the limits of human power and knowledge. The Tower of Babel also symbolizes the inherent limits of human power and knowledge. Despite the immense effort put into constructing the tower, the people of Babel ultimately fail in their endeavor due to their inability to communicate and cooperate. The tower's collapse is not merely a physical one, but a symbolic representation of the limits that exist in human ability. No matter how advanced humanity becomes in its pursuit of knowledge and technology, there are always boundaries that cannot be crossed. This theme is especially relevant in today's world, where technological advancements seem to offer boundless possibilities. The rapid development of artificial intelligence, space exploration, and genetic engineering raises questions about what humanity can achieve. Yet, just as the people of Babel were unable to reach the heavens, there are fundamental limitations to what humans can achieve on their own. The story of Babel reminds us that, while we can strive for greatness, we must recognize the limits of our power and be mindful of the potential consequences of overstepping those boundaries. The Tower of Babel can also be seen as a reflection of humanity's constant search for knowledge. The ambition to build a tower that reaches the heavens can be interpreted as a desire to understand the divine, to grasp the mysteries of the universe. However, the confusion of languages signals that there are some things that may remain beyond human comprehension. This suggests that while the pursuit of knowledge is essential for progress, there are certain mysteries that may never be fully understood. Humility, therefore, becomes an important lesson of the Babel story. No matter how much we learn, we must remain aware of the limits of our understanding. The importance of humility and acknowledging the divine. Underlying the entire story of the Tower of Babel is the idea of divine authority and the need for humility. The people of Babel sought to build a tower that would reach the heavens, but their efforts were thwarted by God's intervention. In this sense, the story highlights the idea that human beings, no matter how powerful or ambitious, must ultimately acknowledge their place in the grand scheme of things. The tower represents an attempt to elevate human status to the level of the divine, but the scattering of the people shows that this attempt is futile. This lesson of humility is particularly important in today's world, where many people are increasingly focused on individual achievement and self-glorification. In the pursuit of success, wealth, or power, it is easy to forget the importance of humility and the recognition that our efforts are part of a larger, more complex reality. The Babel story reminds us that no matter how advanced our civilization becomes, we must always acknowledge the limits of our power and the need for divine guidance or greater purpose. Humility also plays a critical role in the way we approach our relationships with others. Just as the people of Babel were united in their ambition, but divided by their failure to understand each other, the lack of humility in modern relationships can lead to conflict and misunderstanding. The ability to listen, to be open to different perspectives, and to work together despite differences is essential for building bridges in a divided world. The Tower of Babel in the modern world. The lessons of the Tower of Babel continue to resonate in the modern world. Today, we live in an age where globalization, technological innovation, and cultural exchange are more prevalent than ever. While these developments have brought many benefits, they have also created new challenges, particularly in terms of communication and cooperation. The Babel story serves as a reminder that, despite our progress, we must remain vigilant about the dangers of division, pride, and overreaching. Whether in the context of global politics, social dynamics, or technological advancements, the story of Babel challenges us to consider the consequences of our actions and to recognize the importance of unity, humility, and respect for the limitations of our power. In a world that is increasingly interconnected, the Tower of Babel reminds us that true progress is not measured solely by technological or material achievements, but by our ability to work together, to communicate effectively, and to respect the inherent limitations of our condition. The lessons of Babel, therefore, are not just about the past, but are deeply relevant to the future of humanity as we navigate the complex challenges of the modern age. The story of the Tower of Babel is deeply rooted in the biblical tradition, particularly in the book of Genesis, where it serves as a foundational narrative explaining the origins of linguistic diversity. However, the symbolism of Babel and its themes of unity, division, human ambition, and divine intervention have resonated beyond Christianity and Judaism, influencing various other religious and cultural traditions. In exploring the Tower of Babel through the lens of other religions and traditions, we gain a broader understanding of its universal significance and the ways in which different cultures have interpreted the symbolism of this ancient tale. The Tower of Babel in Islamic tradition. In Islam, the story of the Tower of Babel is also mentioned, although it appears with slight variations in the Quran. While the Quran does not provide a detailed narrative of the Tower of Babel as found in the Bible, it contains elements that reflect the themes of human pride and divine intervention. In the Islamic tradition, human beings are also cautioned against arrogance and the desire to build structures or create things that challenge the authority of God. The Quran speaks of the punishment of those who disobey God and act in pride, and many Islamic scholars have interpreted the Tower of Babel story as a cautionary tale about the consequences of defying divine will. The confusion of languages that follows the construction of the tower is seen as a direct result of humanity's pride and disobedience. In Islamic thought, the division of languages can also be interpreted as a way to prevent human beings from uniting in rebellion against God's sovereignty. Although the details of the story are not as prominent in Islam as in Judaism and Christianity, the underlying moral message is very much the same. Humanity must remain humble before the Creator. The Tower of Babel in ancient Mesopotamian culture. Before it became a religious symbol in the Judeo-Christian and Islamic traditions, the story of Babel may have been inspired by older Mesopotamian myths. The city of Babel, or Babylon, was a powerful and influential city in ancient Mesopotamia, and its legendary ziggurats, massive step temples, were often seen as symbols of human ambition and divine connection. The most famous of these ziggurats was the Etemenanke, which some believe may have been the inspiration for the biblical Tower of Babel. In ancient Mesopotamian culture, ziggurats were constructed as earthly representations of a cosmic mountain, which was believed to connect the heavens and the earth. The idea behind the ziggurat was to build a monumental structure that could serve as a link between the divine and the human realm. The construction of these enormous structures required vast resources, labor, and a sense of collective effort, which mirrors the biblical tale of the Babel project. In this context, The Tower of Babel story might have been a critique or reflection on humanity's desire to build something so grand that it could rival the divine realm, highlighting the dangers of overreach and the consequences of pride. The Tower of Babel in ancient Greek philosophy. While the Tower of Babel is not directly referenced in ancient Greek philosophy, certain philosophical ideas share themes with the story, particularly in relation to the concepts of hubris and divine punishment. In Greek mythology, the theme of human pride and the resulting divine retribution is prominent, as seen in stories such as that of the Titan Prometheus, who defied Zeus by giving fire to humans, or the myth of Icarus, whose attempt to fly too close to the sun led to his downfall. These stories echo the biblical tale of Babel, where humanity's desire to transcend its limits leads to catastrophe. Philosophically, Greek thinkers such as Aristotle and Plato considered the dangers of excessive pride and the importance of maintaining balance in human endeavors. The Tower of Babel could be seen as a metaphor for the Greek idea of hubris, excessive pride, or self-confidence that offends the gods. In both Greek and biblical thought, hubris results in nemesis or retribution, often in the form of divine punishment. This connection between Babel and the Greek concept of hubris underscores the broader cultural understanding that pride and ambition, when taken to extremes, invite downfall. The Tower of Babel in Hinduism. In Hinduism, while there is no direct equivalent to the story of the Tower of Babel, there are numerous myths that explore the themes of human ambition and the limits of human power. One such myth involves the building of a bridge to the heavens, as seen in the story of the construction of the Rama Setu, or Adam's Bridge, a chain of natural limestone shoals between India and Sri Lanka. According to Hindu tradition, the bridge was built by Lord Rama and his army of monkeys as part of a divine mission. However, like the Tower of Babel, this construction faced challenges, and the building of the bridge involved immense effort and cooperation. While not a tale of human pride, the Rama Setu story does highlight the ambition of humans, or beings, to reach the divine, and the task of building something as monumental as a bridge to the heavens. In Hindu philosophy, the idea of reaching or attaining divinity is often tempered with the realization that humans cannot surpass their limitations without divine intervention. The story of the Rama Setu, in this sense, can be seen as a reminder that human efforts, though admirable, must always be aligned with divine will. The Tower of Babel in African traditions. In some African traditions, particularly those found in the Yoruba religion, there are stories of human beings attempting to reach the heavens, or attempting to connect with the divine. These myths often involve divine beings intervening when humans become too ambitious. Similar to the Babel story, the people in these African myths may be punished by being scattered, confused, or even exiled from the divine realm. The African interpretation of the Babel story aligns with the broader African spiritual worldview, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of humanity and the divine. The idea that humans cannot reach the heavens without divine guidance or approval is a recurring theme in many African myths. In these traditions, there is often a balance between human ambition and respect for the divine, and the consequences of disrupting that balance are made clear through various mythological stories. The Tower of Babel in modern spiritual thought. In modern spiritual thought, the Tower of Babel continues to serve as a symbol of human ambition and divine order. Many contemporary spiritual teachings highlight the importance of humility, cooperation, and understanding in the face of modern technological advancements and global challenges. As humanity seeks to explore the cosmos, alter its genetic makeup, and create new forms of life, the story of the Tower of Babel serves as a reminder that there are limits to human power and understanding. The myth challenges us to consider the ethical implications of our actions, as well as the importance of humility in our pursuit of knowledge and progress. Across various religious and cultural traditions, the Tower of Babel has served as a powerful symbol of the dangers of human ambition and the limits of human power. Whether viewed through the lens of Christianity, Islam, ancient Mesopotamian culture, Greek philosophy, Hinduism, African spirituality, or modern thought, the story resonates with the fundamental themes of pride, unity, divine intervention, and the importance of humility. In a world that continues to push the boundaries of human achievement, the lessons of Babel remain as relevant as ever, reminding us of the need for balance between ambition and respect for the divine order. The Tower of Babel is one of the most well-known stories from ancient texts, particularly the Bible, where it symbolizes the dangers of human arrogance and the divine response to human hubris. While the story is rooted in ancient history, its relevance has transcended the centuries, and it continues to be a powerful metaphor in contemporary discussions. In the modern world, where human ambition and technological advancements often reach unprecedented heights, the lessons of the Tower of Babel are more relevant than ever. This story remains a reminder of the limits of human endeavor and the potential consequences of overstepping boundaries that might lead to chaos and division. The paradox of globalization and unity. In today's interconnected world, globalization has created a paradox that echoes the situation in Babel. With the advent of modern technology, social media, and the global economy, humanity has never been more united or more divided. On one hand, the Tower of Babel's story teaches that human unity, specifically the desire to build something as grand as the tower in defiance of divine authority, can lead to catastrophe. The unification of the world's cultures, economies, and communication systems can lead to a more harmonious world, but it can also create divisions and inequalities. The modern equivalent of Babel is found in the globalized society, where language, culture, and technological advancements are both the bridges and barriers. As people from all corners of the earth become more interconnected, misunderstandings and cultural clashes arise, much like the confusion of languages in the Babel narrative. Despite the positive potential of globalization, where we are able to share knowledge, culture, and resources, the ever-growing division between wealth and poverty, developed and developing nations, and the vast digital divide between countries still exists. The story of Babel warns us that even in our drive for unity and progress, we may inadvertently sow the seeds of division, as the very tools we use to communicate and understand each other could also serve to isolate us. The pursuit of knowledge and technology. In the modern world, the relentless pursuit of knowledge, progress, and technology mirrors the ambition behind the construction of the Tower of Babel. Just as the people of Babel sought to build a tower that would reach the heavens, humanity today strives to push the boundaries of science, technology, and exploration. From sending humans into space to the ongoing advancements in artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and the internet, humans are on a continuous quest to transcend the limits of nature and even of life itself. The Tower of Babel represents an archetype of technological ambition that may ultimately lead to unintended consequences. While technological advancement has brought numerous benefits to society, it also raises profound ethical questions about the consequences of unchecked progress. For instance, in the realm of artificial intelligence, there are concerns about creating machines that could surpass human intelligence and potentially lead to unforeseen outcomes. The ambition to create perfect technologies, just as the people of Babel aimed to build a perfect tower, carries risks. It is a reminder that even our greatest achievements must be approached with caution and humility. Technology, like the tower, could become a symbol of our ambition, but it also serves as a reminder of the limits that must be respected to avoid self-destruction. Language and communication in the modern world. The biblical story of Babel centers on the confusion of languages, which led to the scattering of the people across the earth. This theme of language and communication continues to hold deep relevance today. While the global world has access to a common set of languages, especially English, which has become the lingua franca of the digital age, the idea of communication breakdowns remains crucial. The more connected we are, the more complicated our interactions become. The digital age has brought an overwhelming flood of information, often fragmented across different platforms, languages, and cultures. In the Tower of Babel story, the breaking of a common language led to a scattering of people, making it impossible for them to understand one another. Today, the challenge is not a literal confusion of languages, but rather the fragmentation of communication in a digital era. Online platforms, social media, and personalized algorithms create echo chambers where people only interact with those who share similar beliefs, reinforcing divisions. Instead of uniting humanity, the tools created to connect us have, in some ways, deepened divides and fragmented society into isolated groups. Moreover, the rise of digital misinformation, fake news, and deep fakes exemplifies the dangers of communication that, rather than fostering unity, misleads and divides. Much like the confusion at Babel, the lack of shared truth and understanding in our modern communications can lead to distrust and chaos rather than harmony. The individual versus the collective. The ethics of ambition. The Tower of Babel highlights a profound tension between individual ambition and collective purpose. The people of Babel sought to make a name for themselves, ignoring the divine plan and trying to impose their own will. In the modern world, this struggle between personal and collective ambitions remains prominent. Individuals, especially in capitalist societies, often pursue their own interests, believing that this will eventually lead to greater success and prosperity for everyone. However, this individualistic drive can undermine the collective good. Modern examples of this conflict include the rapid rise of billionaires who seek to push the boundaries of human exploration, such as space tourism, while vast swaths of the global population continue to live in poverty. The ethical questions that arise from such actions, where the ambitions of the few overshadow the needs of the many, are not unlike the moral dilemmas posed by the Tower of Babel. The Bible tells of a unified people trying to create something grand for themselves, without regard for divine will. And today, we often see similar patterns where personal success is prioritized over the common good. The pursuit of unchecked power and ambition, whether through wealth, technology, or influence, continues to challenge the very fabric of society and the planet. The fear of the unknown and human fragility. At its core, the story of Babel reveals a fear of the unknown, the divine intervention that leads to the scattering of people and the creation of different languages could be interpreted as an effort to contain this fear. Humans were too unified in their ambitions, and their attempt to build a tower to the heavens was seen as a direct challenge to the order of creation. In modern times, humanity's fear of the unknown manifests in different ways. From fears surrounding climate change to the ethical dilemmas posed by new technologies. The anxiety surrounding the future and our ability to control it mirrors the actions of the Babel builders who sought to control their fate by constructing a tower that defied natural boundaries. Today, the fear of the unknown leads to both progress and peril. On one hand, humanity's desire to conquer the unknown has led to groundbreaking discoveries in medicine, science, and space exploration. On the other hand, it has also introduced new risks and vulnerabilities, such as environmental degradation and the threat of nuclear war. The fear of losing control over the future is something that echoes through the ages and connects the modern world with the ancient myth of Babel. The story of the Tower of Babel, though ancient, continues to resonate deeply with modern humanity. Its symbolism and the lessons it conveys are timeless, offering profound insights into human ambition, communication, and the consequences of overstepping boundaries. The tower's construction, driven by the desire to reach the heavens and make a name for oneself, stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of excessive pride and the pursuit of power without consideration of the greater good. In today's world, we find ourselves in many ways mimicking the ambition of the Babel builders. Our technological advancements, attempts at global unity, and quest for knowledge echo the same drive to reach higher and farther. Yet, much like the builders of Babel, we are confronted with unforeseen consequences. The global connectivity we have achieved, through the internet and communication technologies, has led to both unity and division. We are more connected than ever, but at the same time, we are more fragmented in terms of culture, ideology, and understanding. The Babel story warns us that unchecked ambition, when not grounded in humility and respect for diversity, can lead to chaos, confusion, and separation. Furthermore, the tale invites reflection on the importance of balance between individual desire and collective well-being. In the modern age, the pursuit of personal success often takes precedence over the needs of the community, leading to societal fragmentation and inequality. The Tower of Babel reminds us that true progress is found in unity, cooperation, and a shared purpose, rather than in the pursuit of self-interest at the expense of others. The enduring relevance of Babel also speaks to the human condition. Despite all our advances, we remain fragile and vulnerable, unable to fully control the forces we unleash. The story encourages us to recognize our limitations and to approach progress with caution, mindfulness, and respect for the interconnectedness of all people and the environment. Ultimately, the Tower of Babel serves as a powerful reminder. Human ambition, when unchecked by wisdom and humility, can lead to unintended consequences. It calls on us to reflect on our actions, to seek unity over division, and to build a future that values cooperation, understanding, and respect for the greater good.